Welcome to the Ricecast. I am your host, Dan Pigsley, sitting across the table from Pastor Willie Rice. Pastor, how are you this morning?
Doing great. It's a good day. A lot to be thankful for this week.
A lot to be thankful for. Here's the thing, Pastor. There's questions on everybody's head. You know, obviously last night was the election, but, you know, people lost sleep this weekend. People were a little nervous, and I would just like to know, why didn't the Bucs go for 2?
That's right.
So,
yeah. The big story of the week in Tampa. Was a Monday night, and I actually was in a meeting, and we had the Women's Night of Worship was here. Mm-hmm. We had a lot of things going on, and I don't usually stay up for these games. So here's the deal. I know people are very interested in my sleeping habits, but I'm not a late night person. So even if Tampa's playing Monday Night Football, I don't. Now, Florida's playing, that can keep me up for good and bad reasons. But I fell asleep, Tampa, I have to say, and then Cheryl got home late because they'd been at this event Monday night. So she gets in a little bit later. I'd already fallen asleep, and it woke me up. Well, then I can't go back to sleep. So I thought, well, I might as well watch the rest of the Bucs game. So I got up and watched the Bucs as they drove down, tied the game with, 30 seconds left.
Yeah, it was awesome.
I think it was 33 seconds. Very exciting. They played a very good game against one of the NFL's best. Maybe the only – are they the only unbeaten team? Kansas City, at Kansas City. And I'm immediately thinking, because Florida – I know football fans know this. Florida was in a situation a few weeks ago at Tennessee. Scored late. And I thought, look, here's my – coaches can agree, disagree. You're on the road. You're an underdog. And you get a chance at the end of the game to win the game with one play, take it.
Yep.
Take it. I want to go down fighting, clawing, spitting. I mean, the ball's in my hand, and if I lose, I'll shake the other guy's hand.
Yep.
But I don't want to kick it off to some dude named Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
Because that guy is a cold-blooded killer. He will get you every time. And that's what happened.
Yep.
We lose the coin toss, down he goes. So I think we would all feel much better had they gone for 2 and lost it. But
well, and that's the thing. Again, we can do a whole podcast, and I don't want to spend everybody's time on the NFL overtime rules. And we can also do
terrible rules.
They're awful rules. But I can also do a whole podcast on. I'm pretty sure the refs use a double-headed coin anyway.
Is that right?
So
well,
it was just a mess. And
as soon as you knew he got the ball, you thought it's over.
Well, you saw it in Baker. As soon as he saw it, he's like, it's over. Like, just hang up the pads. It's over for the day. But last night. You said you go to bed early. So last night was the election. How late were you up last night?
So today is the day after the election. We're recording this. As people know, we usually record it on Wednesday. And I stayed up to about 12:30-ish, which was really good for me. I mean, that's like I feel very proud of myself for staying up that long. I wanted to stay up late enough for everything to be called, but they just were taking so much. You know, and I get tired of all their chit chat on TV. They're just saying the same thing. Seems like. So at some point, it looked like it was in hand. I went to bed, but I found myself waking up to check it at least 2 other times. So it was kind of a short night, but the elections are over. I have a lot to. I think we have a lot to be thankful for. Again, I know that we're talking to people. I know politics divides people. I know we talked about this Sunday. But there are a number of things that unequivocally we have a reason to be thankful for, and then all of us should approach this with a degree of thanksgiving, and as we think about the change in our country.
Yeah, well, let's just start early because polls close, and then as soon as polls close, almost like a couple of minutes after that, Governor Ron DeSantis sends out a tweet that Amendment 4 and Amendment 3 didn't pass, and so we talked last week a lot about Amendment 4. So I would love just to talk about that for a few minutes. I know there's a lot more on the ballot I want to talk to, but with Amendment 4, obviously, if you look at the data, I think you got like 57% yes and 42% no. But for amendments like that, you need what's called a supermajority, which is 60% of the vote. What was going through your head when all that happened? Because we talked about it for a while.
Yeah, first of all, can we just shout out to the state of Florida? We may not be very good at football right now, but we are very good at counting.
Yeah.
And we weren't always. Some of us can remember back in 2020 when we were the laughingstock of the country because we couldn't get our votes counted. But that is a long time ago.
Right.
We still got stage. You and I sit here still counting.
Yep.
I do not understand it. And I'll just, if this is a political opinion, I do not understand why every vote could not be counted within an hour of the polls closing in every state.
Right.
There is just, I cannot for the life of me fathom why you cannot have every single vote counted, not just once, but cross-tabulation so that you have 2 or 3 ways of counting so you can make sure there's nothing that is an aberration or an outlier. It's inconceivable to me. And when people say, oh, it's harder than you think, well, I'm sure it is. It's also harder than I think to go to the moon, but people do it. And let me tell you something. Florida does it. We count the votes. They're in. They're done. We can tell you who won or lost within an hour. Apparently, other states, we're talking about you, Arizona, and you, Michigan, I think, is still counting. Good night in the morning. That's ridiculous. Get them counted. Florida, hooray. We're very proud of our state. Secondly, let's talk about the substance, though, of Amendment 4. We spent a lot of time in the last podcast talking about Amendment 4 and what an important amendment this was, important to defeat it because it's so badly worded and it opened the door to essentially unrestricted, even taxpayer-funded abortion. Again, our last podcast covers all of that. And as you stated, it has to have 60% to be a constitutional amendment. I still think that is a terrible way to amend your Constitution, these popular ballots, because they're funded by outside interest groups. Our governor said over $100 million was spent on this one, and another 140 or 50 million was spent on Amendment 3. Out by outside groups. They don't even live in Florida. And there were a number of pro-life measures, by the way, on ballots across the country, and it was not a good night for the pro-life movement. And for those of us with pro-life conviction, only 1 or 2 of those went in what I would say is a good way. But in the state of Florida, it did. It did not. That amendment did not reach the 60% threshold, and so I'm very, very grateful. And there's a lot of things I think we should say today. I was very thankful for that. And you're right. That was an early call, and I was extremely happy. And by the way, we didn't talk as much about Amendment 3 because it's not as much, it doesn't have quite the moral gravity of the Amendment 4 situation. But it was a bad amendment. It was a terrible amendment, and it also went down. And I was thrilled for both. And I, don't apologize for that at all. We've been very outspoken about that. I want to say a couple of things. First of all, Governor Ron DeSantis, and we should give credit where credit is due. Our governor, and it's no secret I'm an admirer of our governor, so if that offends somebody, I'm sorry. But I am grateful for so many things that he has done. But this guy was not on the ballot last night. He was not in a race. He could have sat at home. He could have sat at the beach. He could have given 1 or 2 speeches, called it a day. He was relentless in the last 2 to 3 weeks of this campaign, as if he was fighting for his political life. And he was right here in Clearwater like a week ago. We went. You were there. We went to a press conference. A number of our staff did. He was crisscrossing the state, 2 or 3 speeches a day, to raise the alarm about Amendment 3 and Amendment 4. And I don't know many political leaders in America who would do that. He did it, and I'm sure he's listening to the podcast. Yeah, I'm sure he's a big listener. But our governor, the First Lady, Casey DeSantis, I just could not be more proud of them, more thankful for them. This is not about being partisan. It's about just calling it like it is. I am grateful for their courageous, moral leadership, and I'm not sure that amendment fails without the governor doing everything he did over the last 2 to 3 weeks.
I would agree with that. I would completely agree with that. It's just the amount of work that he and his team put in. You got to be proud of him.
Yeah, you were at the press conference, and you saw, how passionate he spoke, and how eloquently he spoke, and I got to believe that helped get the victory.
Right.
A great deal.
And it doesn't hurt having Tony Dungy standing there, too.
Tony Dungy. There were people, I think Tim Tebow spoke out about it at some point, but Tony Dungy, he put himself out there, and he's going to get criticized for that, But he put himself out there, and then many pastors did. Now, somebody said, hey, some pastors didn't do all they could do, and that's probably true, and that's on them, because if you can't speak out about this, gosh, I don't know what you're going to speak out about. But I know a lot of pastors who did, and who they They spoke about it. They encouraged their people, and I'm certain if the churches and the Christians in those churches had not stood up and become activated, that it probably would have passed. So I'm great. So on the one hand, I'm very grateful. Now there's a backside to this. 57% of the people voted yes on this amendment, and it's a terrible amendment. It's not like even a middle-of-the-road abortion amendment, like, hey, we protect, after viability or something like that. And you could go, well, I'm pro-life, but I could see how people would compromise on it. No, this amendment was terrible, horrible, awful. I'm running out of adjectives. And it's still got 57% of the vote. Right. In Florida, a very conservative state. So what does that tell us? Well, it tells us that on the issue of abortion, we are in a minority. Those of us who are pro-life biblical Christians are in a minority, and we just need to accept that our position is a minority position. And I think decades of legalized abortion in America, Roe v. Wade being the law of the land, has raised a generation that has been desensitized, has been subject to propaganda, and has not learned to think biblically and wisely and compassionately about the issue of abortion. So guess what? We got work to do. Yes, we can celebrate today. We can high five and all that sorts of pop the champagne, but we don't do that here. But if you did, it'd be okay, right. But we can celebrate. But you know what? It needs to be kind of short-lived. We're grateful. Right. It's a significant victory, significant. But it just shows you that the issue of helping people think about this issue biblically and righteously, it remains. We have a lot of work to be done.
We do. And what I love about Calvary as a whole, like our network of churches, is we have this vision that you presented 8 years ago, I believe, with our X150 vision. And one of those components of the X150 vision is, yes, we are pro-life, but we are womb to tomb. Like, we're not just fighting for pro-life. We're fighting for kids throughout their entire lives. And so I shared with you a little earlier, I met with Lainey Gibney, kind of oversees a lot of our partnerships and is just a huge advocate for children. And she shared with me, just in the past few years, 141 children have been impacted from foster care and adoption through Calvary's X150 program. Just this year, 5 kids have gotten adopted, 15 current foster families, and we have 73 guardian ad litems who are fighting for kids in the courtrooms. Like, this is who we are as Calvary.
Yep.
We're continuing the fight. We're continuing doing these things, and I just want to commend you for putting that in front of our church.
This has been a value of our church even long before me. I can remember Pastor Anderson and the partnership with what used to be the Florida Baptist Children's Home, now One More Child, and they're one of our state partners doing work across the state. We have local partners like Adore Hope that do a lot of work here, and we're grateful for all these partners. But it's been a value of Calvary for a long, long time. Look, one of the criticisms that sometimes people will say is, oh, you people who talk about abortion, you don't really care about people after they're born.
Right.
Well, that's absolute nonsense. If you want to look at who is doing more to help people in need in the areas like you mentioned, but also many other areas, it's churches, it's pro-life Christians, and so we do care about children. And not just before they're born, but also after they're born. And one of those values, is we wanted to impact 150 children through foster care and adoption ministry, even as we plant churches and even as we send out leaders. So it is a great thing to celebrate, and a great reminder that the work is holistic, as you said. It's not just about legislation. That is an important component, and we don't minimize it, and we needed to talk about it, and we did. Good. And by the way, they'll fight again. This fight will come back.
Right.
And we'll talk about it again, because we'll never quit. And you say, well, what happens if you lose? We'll keep talking about it. I mean, we're not going away. But we're not going to just fight on that end. We're also going to serve children in need, families in crisis. We're building our Compassion Center right now, which is going to be a house for all those ministries that are serving families in need, and for foster care and adoption-based ministries all around the Tampa Bay area. We're building that on our Safety Harbor campus actually now, but that really is serving all of our network of churches and churches across this area. So we're doing a lot, and you mentioned Lainey Gibney and her team. She does a great job as our director of local ministries. But also many, many volunteers, many families that have served and made a difference. So you're right. The work continues.
Yes, sir.
And the battle goes on.
Yep. Well, speaking of the battle, I mean, you keep looking down the ballot, and last night I was up till 4. I don't know.
Were you up? Man.
I can't.
You're a young
I can't
man.
get enough. I'm just sitting there glued to the TV.
See, if I was up to 4, I'd be bad for a week. I'd be out for a week.
So, but I'm sitting there, I'm on the couch, and around 10:30, you're like, this is going a little bit differently than I thought. Like, where were you at? Like, again, you were there. I think Kamala's campaign manager came out around 12:15, 12:30. So you may have seen that. And you said, "Hey, we'll talk to you in the morning," and still haven't heard anything yet. But whatever. But
yeah, by the time I went to bed, it was pretty obvious former President Trump was going to win. Mm-hmm. Look, let's put some cards on the table. I preached the message last Sunday. We can put the notes in there, which is trying to help our people think holistically, biblically, and convictionally about God, government, and political affairs. And so, no need to go through all that here. I laid it out. I don't endorse candidates. We don't. I didn't endorse former President Trump. I don't endorse candidates, even ones that I'm enthusiastic about. But the reality is, and I gave reasons why I don't do that. And one of it is I think we have a responsibility to be unencumbered and to be able to speak truth regardless of the situation. However, I also said that on the balance of the issues that I think are of greatest importance in terms of the putting righteous people in righteous places to enact righteous laws, I clearly felt like one option was better than the other, and I do feel that way. And so that's the choice I made. And I also said I love people who make another choice. I'm not going to break fellowship over politics unless they choose to. But I felt the way I did, and those are the reasons. To me, when I look at the issues of righteousness, who's going to put the most righteous? It's not even about personal righteousness because both people are flawed, very flawed. Yes. Let's just be honest. Right. Both have lived complicated lives. The word complicated is loaded. Yeah. And both have.
Right.
Okay. And of course, there are no perfect candidates anyway, but both had lived very, very complex and complicated lives. I was looking at who's going to put the most people of righteous character in the most strategic places who will enact the most righteous legislation to impact the most number of people. And to me, it wasn't a close choice.
Right.
And again, others are free to have their opinion. So I was glad, I'll just say it, the former president won. And I guess it's clear to everybody that's who I voted for. And I'll say it now. And am not ashamed about that at all.
Sure.
Despite the fact that there are many things that I disagree with him about. So I was grateful for that. I think now, though, what is the Christian view? It isn't, again, to spike the ball, to try to dunk on people who had a different political opinion as if they're enemies. That's not what we do. Other people can do that. It's funny. You can laugh at their memes and all that. But these are our neighbors. These are our friends, some of whom don't see it the way we see it, and sometimes there's a lot of reasons. Well, there's a lot of reasons for that. We love people. We should be thankful to the Lord. First of all, we should be grateful that Amendment 4 failed.
Yes.
We should be very grateful. So if you're one of those people that prayed last Sunday when we had an altar call, if you're one of those people that have been praying even on Election Day, don't miss the opportunity today to say, God, thank you. We are grateful for this expression of grace on our country. We can be thankful. We should pray for the president. We should pray for our new president-elect, Trump. You said, well, would you have said that? Did you say that 4 years ago? I absolutely did. Absolutely. I prayed for President Biden. I did it publicly. I prayed for President Obama and did it publicly. So, and I will pray for President-elect Trump. And I will say that those who seek to disparage him and call names, fascist, dictator, Nazi, stop that, please. You're not contributing to a healthier national discourse. Right. This man was elected president by a majority of our citizens who voted. And even if you did not vote for him, I did, but even if you did not, now is the time for us to all pray for him, to pray for his family, to pray for his wisdom, and to pray that God will use him for his purposes. Yep. Everyone should do that. It's inexcusable that anyone would not. Right. And so hopefully we'll see people do that, but I'm not sure nationally we're going to see that.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. For me, I love the history of it all.
Yep.
So I'm watching this all unfold last night, and it just, kind of going back to old history classes.
Very
in college,
historic. Only second time in American history.
It's been 131 years since a president has not served consistent terms.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And it's only happened once.
It's only happened one other time.
By the way, my wife asked me, so what's the deal about Grover Cleveland? I said, I don't know. I got to go back and figure it out. Now it makes me want to read
exactly
a book.
Right. Yeah. But here's the crazy thing: Grover Cleveland actually won the popular vote that second time he ran as well, but he was beaten out by I don't know. I can't. Benjamin something. I can't remember. But
Harrison maybe.
That's it. Yeah. But what's interesting with this one is Trump winning the popular vote. That was incredible because that hasn't happened since
20 years.
20 years since George W. Bush. Yeah, since Republican. So I would ask. I want to get into kind of next steps for believers in a moment, but we have talked so much about just on our staff where we're living in a post welcoming world for churches and people that have a theological worldview. But now you see President Trump winning the popular vote. How do you think that came about?
Sometimes we use the phrase negative world, which comes from Aaron Renn's book. Well, I would say that political coalitions are composed of many people. Evangelicals are just one group, and Trump. I haven't seen the final numbers about the percentage. It probably is 80-20 or better that went for President Trump. I don't know. Maybe you know the exact number. That I would guess it's in that neighborhood. But that's just one part of a coalition. There are people that are in that coalition that voted for President that I probably would disagree with on a lot of issues. There are a group called sometimes referred to as barstool conservatives that are like the little bit crude, a little bit they don't like the leftist cultural values, but it's not necessarily that they've embraced biblical values either. But they're in that coalition. You have just people that are maybe more fiscally conservative or maybe appreciated as foreign policy. You have people like Elon Musk and Robert. I mean, he had a very diverse. Robert Kennedy came in, Tulsi Gabbard. So you had a very diverse coalition of people, and so that's what I would say. I would say no. I don't know that. I would say two things. I don't think it represents, we should not walk around saying this is spiritual renewal. Okay, no. This is an election. Those are two different things. However, the hope I would have is that it might reflect, at least to some degree, and I think a pretty large degree, a rejection and repudiation of some of the more extreme woke leftist values that we have seen embodied that were almost inexplicably embraced by the Democratic Party. Things like the transgender movement, which is the radical flower of the LGBTQ movement, and all that went along with it. Biological men playing in women's sports, high-level leaders that were almost caricatures of themselves, biological men identifying as women, the health secretary of the country, and so on. It's almost like you're like, you got to be kidding me. And I do think there is a certain level of, if I could just say it, craziness that a lot of American people were saying enough. Enough.
And I was even watching one news anchor that I won't say what channel it was because nobody else would watch it. Okay. But he said, it came down to two things. It came down, three things. It came down to the economy, came down to immigration, and it came down to a lot of transgender movements. And he used the word, it was weird. And that's where the left ended up seeing it. And that's really what lost them the vote because they were just going further down than people saw as normal. So,
and while I don't think that necessarily represents a spiritual awakening, oh wow, these people are going to repent of all their sin. No, because some of them would turn around and have nothing to say about heterosexual sin or nothing to say about a promiscuous lifestyle. They would. That's fine. And it's not fine. It's an offense and a sin against God. Many of those, that's why 57% would vote for Amendment 4. So, and yet President Trump won overwhelmingly in Florida. So there were people voting in President Trump's group who turned around and voted for Amendment 4.
You look at Miami-Dade County.
A lot.
Miami-Dade County, they hadn't voted Republican since '88, so the year I was born, and they were red. But when you look at Amendment 4, they voted for it. It was it's interesting to look at,
So I don't think it represents, a spiritual way. But you know what? It's something. It's something to say that people are out there are going, Okay, something's wrong. This doesn't make sense. And what can you do with that? I don't think it's the time to necessarily spike or ridicule or, although sometimes there's a place of saying, hey, that's ridiculous and it's okay to make it look ridiculous. But I do think more than that, because it's not about having a clever meme or telling a joke or something like that. And we don't want to denigrate people. We don't want to be unkind to people. But I do think it does represent a moment where people are going, okay, something is wrong with this. And you're right. And now we can step in and go, yes, let us tell you why it's wrong. You're not being mean. You're not being unkind. This is disordered. This violates the order of God.
Yes.
And maybe it opens the door to talk about other things that are disordered as well that led us to this current moment.
And I knew you were going to get to that point. This has opened up a door for believers to step in and have some real conversations. Because, again, you're on Facebook in the morning and you see the memes, you see the people like, I walked outside and was able to breathe fresh air today. I was like, I did that yesterday.
Yes.
It's like, it was always fresh,
yeah.
But there are people that a weight they feel like they've won something and a weight is off their shoulders. And I understand that. I get that. But there's still a battle for the soul of your neighbor, the soul of the people you work with, the soul for your family. This is, yes, a victory politically, but when it comes to the kingdom of God, like, there is still so much work to be done.
There's a mission field on the right in the Trump coalition.
Yes.
I would say this. There's a lot of people in the Trump coalition, the voters there, who are at least minimally open to spiritual things, and maybe more than minimally. That is, they see something is wrong in the soul of America, and they're looking for courageous, convictional churches that will speak to that and help them understand it. I would say on the left, again, we love our neighbors on the left too, and if you're one of those people who struggles, like, because the person is wearing a Harris T-shirt, you don't even know how to have the conversation. You can always have a conversation.
Yep.
Remember, he that wins souls is wise.
Yes.
So sometimes it takes a little bit to win a soul. And you could tell, well, tell me about your viewpoint. I don't share that, but help me understand yours without getting angry. You don't have to win a debate. The election's over, so you don't have to win a debate.
Yes.
Now you can just try to win a neighbor. Like, what was it that attracted you? What bothers you about this? And you know what? You might have an opportunity for a civil conversation, and you might be surprised that even people who see things different politically, there might be an openness to conversation and hopefully even the gospel. So there are conversations to be had on both sides. But I think one of the lessons we've learned in this election and over the last several years, and again, I spoke to this some Sunday, is we don't earn the right to have more of those conversations because we're unclear about our convictions or ambiguous or lukewarm about our convictions. Actually, it's when we're clear about our convictions, we articulate those convictions, we courageously say, this is what we believe, that I think earns us the right then more in people's eyes and in their hearts to have the conversations that need to be had. Clarity is a good thing right now, and convictional clarity is absolutely needed.
And I love where you went with that, because I had the same thought in my head. Because a lot of, in our area, a lot of people do early voting, and so we're walking around. You're seeing, the Biden-Harris sign.
The Harris Wall.
Wow, Harris Wall sign.
Yeah.
Just went back in time a little bit.
Well, you didn't go back that far.
That's
you just
true.
went back 3 months.
You see the signs. I'm looking at my neighbors. I asked them, hey, did you already vote? Yes, I did. Okay, help. Can you tell me? We're walking down the street.
Yeah.
It's a great conversation. It's a great way to just be a neighbor and have those conversations, because there's no threat anymore. It's like after a football game, they all go out and shake hands and they're friendly with each other.
Well, sometimes not in the SEC, but no, you're right.
Yeah,
a lot of people do.
Yeah,
a lot of people do, and when you don't come across as hostile and confrontational. Now, some people are, by the way, they're just crazy, and whatever. You just need to go in the other direction. But when you're not hostile and confrontational, like, I got to win an argument, I got to, you can diffuse that moment to say, hey, I didn't see it that way, but tell me, I'm curious how you did see it, or how do you feel now? Because they might feel, like you would feel maybe if something had gone different.
Sure.
And you know what? In that moment, it's okay to show compassion. Like, you know what? I don't think you need to be worried about some of the things that maybe somebody has stirred you up to fear. Because at least I'm just saying there are conversations. I think there's a mission field on the right in the Trump coalition of many people who voted in that way but aren't necessarily Christ followers and have biblical conviction. And I think there are people on our left who there's a mission field there too. Let's be open now in the wake of this. Yes, to pray for our president. Yes, we can be thankful for a measure of grace that I would argue has been demonstrated in allowing us to have a more friendly administration toward what we're doing, churches like us and people like us. But let's be open to people on every side of that, to have gospel conversations, and now to focus on the work of the gospel and the building of the church and the advancement of the kingdom.
And I kind of want to just put a bow on this conversation because it's just we could sit here for hours, but people's drives to work are usually only 45 minutes, so we try to keep it into 45 minutes. But I would like to ask, we've talked about staying on mission in times like these, where you feel some people felt like this is the victory I've always wanted. I have it now, and some people would just say, let me just sit back and enjoy this. Nope, you're still on mission. So help me and our listeners. How do we stay on mission in times like this? You've already said don't be hostile. Yep. Be in prayer. Like what else would you build on that?
We can be grateful, but recognize political victories or defeats are temporary in this world. We don't, as Christians, our view is different. It's like when Paul said, we mourn but not as those who have no hope when someone has lost. We go through the same feelings of victory or defeat. We're happy or we're sad. But we're not like people that don't have an eternal perspective. So you may experience, for instance, a political victory. Can I tell you something? There'll be a political battle tomorrow. It won't be long before there's another one. It's coming. This is not the end all, okay? This is just one thing that happened, and we're grateful. But there'll be another one. So don't get too high. And don't get too low when you lose something. We're often not in a majority here in this world, and so just go, hey, we got work to be done. So I just think not getting too high, not getting too low. Again, that I'm not trying to say we shouldn't be engaged or that we shouldn't be passionately committed to a cause. Many are. I'm grateful for that, but now at least in this immediate aftermath of the election, we can pray for our president, we can love our neighbors, and we can look for opportunities to have gospel conversations and maybe be glad at least that this intense political season is at least over for a little bit.
Yeah.
Like we can't live with this fervor all the time, right? We need a break. So exhale, take a deep breath, be happy, sad, whatever. But now let's be reminded of what we have to do every day.
That's good. And life moves on, and moving on here at Calvary. We have our sending dinner is this Sunday night, which I'm very excited about. You want to talk through that just for a moment?
Well, we're going into a season. You're going to hear us talk about it. There's more to come. And as we go to the end of this year, X150 is still going. It's not supplanting that, all the ministries at Calvary. But over the last 6-7 weeks of the year, we're going to celebrate what God's done in 2024, and my goodness, have there been some victories. And we're going to talk about what we're working on right now. The sending dinner is Sunday night. Maybe you'll post the registration or an opportunity to sign up for that. Our sending banquet is once a year when we kind of get updates on the missionaries we've sent. There'll be some interviews from overseas. We talk about some of the missionaries that are in our pipeline that we're ready to send out. You'll hear some exciting things. It's a dinner in which you kind of get updated on the missionary. It's just that, a sending dinner. We talk about the sending ministry of our church. It's going to be great. Our team has done a great job. If you haven't signed up for that, we'd love for you to sign up. I think you still can.
You can. Yep.
And get to the dinner Sunday night. It'll be fantastic.
Yep.
And then that kind of kicks off this season, which will really go all the way even through Christmas. We'll have Christmas series and all that, but from now to the end of the year, you're going to hear us talking about there's more to come, and we want to get busy with there's more to come.
There is, and there's so much more to come, and I'm excited about that. And just the conversations we've had about it, and what we'll be able to share and talk about over the next month and a half I'm excited to just see what the Lord's going to do and continue to encourage our people. Now, I will say for those of you listening today, Pastor, you're going out of town. Actually, I'm going to go with you for a couple days this week. You're up to the Florida Baptist Convention.
Next week is our Florida Baptist Convention. I'll be here Sunday. I'll be here the weekend. But Florida Baptist Convention is next week. I'm preaching at it, I think, on Tuesday over in Orlando. And then the end of the week, I'll be up in Brooklyn with our friends at Brooklyn Tabernacle for something we do with them. They do a training institute, and so I'll be up there, not on a weekend. This isn't a weekend gig. I'll be up there Thursday, Friday, and then I'll be back the following weekend. So it'll be a busy week next year, next week of travel. And so I doubt we'll do a podcast next week. But
I was hoping you were going to take me to New York with you, but I guess not.
Well, you know.
I'll ask Sarah.
Yeah.
But any big news coming out of the Florida Baptist Convention?
I really don't think so. There's not a lot that's hot button controversy or anything like that. So we've Dr. Tommy Green, who'd been serving there for a number of years, has ended his ministry with us, retired, and we're going to be celebrating him. Yeah. And Dr. Stephen Rummage is the new director of Florida Baptist. Used to be at Bell Shoal. Some of you will remember him, and some of you hear him on the radio. But he's a great preacher. I'm sure we'll have him at Calvary very soon. And so some of that transition is going on, but I don't think anybody's too mad at anybody, which is a good thing in a Baptist meeting.
Awesome. Well, Pastor, any last words for anybody, or just
no? Hey, just grateful, proud of everybody. We've talked about some heavy things over the last couple of weeks, and I'm just really proud of the way our church has processed that. In a way that is respectful, in a way that is serious, and in a way that understands we have got to learn to think about these political, cultural ways from a biblical worldview, from a Christ-like vantage point, but we must engage. And I really feel the hunger in our Calvary family. Hey, we understand that. And I love that our church, we can talk about hard topics that we know are sensitive topics, and we can do that. And I think, I feel good about the conversations we've had over the last couple of weeks.
Good. Yep. I tell you what, it's my fourth or third week on the podcast, and it didn't start off easy, I'll tell you that much, but I've enjoyed every second of it.
We've jumped into a lot of big topics. Yeah.
It's been hot topics, but it's been enjoyable. I love being able to have these conversations with you. I love our people being able to hear just a little bit more of your heart and where our church is at. And it's been great. So appreciate you guys listening today. Just remember, go out there and continue to be a missionary in your neighborhood. Continue to love your neighbors, love your coworkers, love your family, and not just love in action, but love for the sake of the gospel. We love you guys. We'll be praying for you, and we'll talk to you guys soon.